So earlier in the programme we heard from Leah McGrath Goodman, who was banned from coming to Jersey for 2 years. She's an author from the US who began coming to the island after seeing reports on TV stations across the world about the investigation at Haut Le Garenne. She's writing a book on the subject and was interviewing and researching the subject through visits to Jersey. Her trips became fairly frequent and she decided to rent a property in the island because hotel bills were becoming expensive. Miss Goodman spoke to the Immigration Service to find out if she was doing everything above board and says the meeting went well until she mentioned she was investigating child abuse. She then left the island of her own accord, but when she tried to return, she was detained in the UK and banned from coming back for 2 years. After an appeal, this ban was dropped to 1 year. Michael Robinson is from Jersey's Customs and Immigration Service. I asked him earlier why Miss Goodman was banned.
There's a story behind it, I suppose, which I should explain. Miss Goodman arrived in the UK and on being questioned by UK border and immigration officers, they were not satisfied with the story she was giving as to the reason she was visiting the UK and decided to refuse her entry. Once she'd been refused entry into the UK, there is an automatic ban, which to begin with was a couple of years in Miss Goodman's case. It's now been reduced to 1 year. But that's just the end of the story, if you like. There's a whole sequence of events before that that led up to that, I think.
Because the reason she was stopped was essentially because she was flagged up by your authority.
No, that's absolutely not true. The reason she was stopped was the same way as anybody would be stopped coming into the UK from outside. She was stopped for an immigration control. When they swiped her passport and checked her passport, then they would have seen some notes that had been left against her name by us. Now, those notes relate to a conversation we had with Miss Goodman last year, in July last year, when she was in Jersey and came to see us to check up on her immigration status. She wanted to find out if her immigration status was correct for her being in the island. And we gave her the advice. We listened to what she had to tell us. She had arrived as a visitor through the UK. And if you arrive as a visitor, you're allowed to come in, stay for up to 6 months, but not work. Well, Miss Goodman explained to us that the reason she was in Jersey was to undertake research and prepare to write a book. So we looked at that, gave it some thought, and our advice to her was that we didn't consider that met with the visitor status, but there was another immigration status which would fit her, which was specifically that of a writer coming over to research and write a book. But to qualify for that status would require pre-entry clearance. In other words, she would have to go to an embassy or diplomatic post outside of Jersey or the UK. In her case, it would have been the United States. Apply for the pre-entry clearance as a writer. There's almost no reason why she wouldn't have got it. I can't think of a reason why she wouldn't have got it. Then she could have come in and she could have actually stayed up to 2 years under that immigration status. Nothing particularly contentious or difficult about this at all. However, she did tell us she was going to now be leaving, this is last year, July last year, she was going to be leaving Jersey. So what we did, or the officers involved, wrote a note of the meeting they had with Miss Goodman and placed that against her name on a national database. And this is nothing extraordinary about this at all. Now, the reason it's placed on the national database was so that when she did arrive back here or the UK or wherever she arrived back, whichever port, the officer there, the immigration officer, would have those facts in front of him and could make a decision on whether she should be allowed in based on the facts that we had adduced from the meeting with her. And that's what happened. Well, as part of what happened when she arrived back in the UK. What happened then was when she did turn up in the UK, as I say, her name was checked against the national database and this report popped up. But that's not the reason why she was refused. The UK border agency make their own decisions on whether they should let people in. And what they did was they questioned Ms. Goodman about the reasons for her coming to the UK. And to put it frankly, they weren't satisfied with her answers. They did not believe her. They in fact, used the word, believe that there may have been deception involved. And it's on that basis they refused her entry. Nothing to do with it. We took no part in that decision. We knew that she was being questioned because they just asked us if there was any further information which we didn't have. But we played no part in the ultimate decision that the UK border agency had in refusing entry. And that really is the sequence of events.
She says that her initial meeting with an officer from your department was going very well, that he was explaining the different kind of the ways that you can, stay in Jersey for the amount of time you just mentioned and things like that.
Yes.
But the tone and the way the meeting went completely changed when she was asked what her research and what her writing was about, which is, of course, historic child abuse in the island.
Well, the officer has a different series of events to that, or a different perception of the events that happened, and that's not his perception of the events. I can say categorically that the subject of her research in her book had played no part whatsoever in any immigration decision we took. I can see no reason at all why it would played a part in the decision that the UK border agency would have taken. It seems to me incomprehensible. And it's just not part of the whole thing. This was a routine immigration query to us, and it was handled in a routine immigration way.
So these notes that were left on her record as such when she comes into the United Kingdom, what do they contain?
They contain a record of the meeting when she came down to ask about immigration status and what we advised her. In other words, we advised her that when she went out, to come back in as a writer, as a working writer, she would have to apply for pre-entry clearance, a visa in effect. And that would enable her to come back and stay for 2 years, up to 2 years, working as a writer.
Do you know if she'd done that?
I believe she hadn't done it at the time that she arrived back in the UK. But that's not to say she couldn't have come into the UK. She might have been coming as a visitor, I don't know. It's up to her to clear that with the UK immigration authorities. What they knew is that she'd had this conversation with us. Now, they obviously would have taken that into account in some way. How much that played a part in their decision-making, I can't really say. I know that what they do say is that the answers she gave them, they were not satisfied with.
Okay, but your department has had conversations with her recently, hasn't it?
Subsequently, we've been in touch to try and sort out that entry clearance, the visa. And we've explained to her again, and that's a process that's ongoing now.
When did you start contacting her? Was it after the Guardian articles?
Yes.
Why did it take the Guardian and a story to appear in a national newspaper for your department to contact her?
Well, we wouldn't contact anybody in these circumstances. People are coming in and passing immigration all the time for various reasons. They may be refused, they may not. We don't go out our way to say to them, well, how can we help you come in now? I mean, it's up to them to come to us and ask what are the conditions that are needed to come in, and then we'll explain it.
Okay, so why in this case?
Well, in this case, quite clearly, it was high profile, and we knew that she had issues with the way she was being dealt with. So we wanted to try and resolve those, and that's why.
And her ban expires in September. What will she have to do to come back to Jersey? Because she wants to continue her work.
If she wants to come back as a working journalist, researching and writing a book, she should come back under that status, under that immigration status, the writer status, as we've explained quite exhaustively to her. To do that, she has to go to the diplomatic post in the country where she resides and make application. There's a cost to this, and I know that's a factor. I know that's a factor in her, that she thinks of this. There is a cost to it. Once she makes that application, it's referred to us. We will then go back, advise the diplomatic post whether we can say, I should go back a stage. In the first instance, the diplomatic post will look at the circumstances and come to their own view. They will then refer it to us for our view. A combination of those two views will decide whether the visa should be issued. I can see no reason why a visa would not be issued in her case. I can't see a reason sitting here. I don't know what else might come up, but it's where I sit here at the moment, I can't think of a reason why it wouldn't. So I would be confident, as I can be, that when she applies in September, a visa would be issued, if she wants to come back as a working writer. If she wants to come back to visit and not work, she's entitled to do that. The difficulty she will have, quite clearly, is she's told us already that the reason she wants to be in Jersey is to be as a working writer. So she has that hurdle, if you like, to jump over when she comes up to an immigration officer and says, I'm here as a visitor now. Automatically they're going to say, well, I have to reconcile that with what I know already and what you've told us already. That may be reconcilable, it may not. It depends on the circumstances when she arrives.
That's Mike Robinson from Customs and Immigration speaking to you about the case of Leah McGrath Goodman, who was banned from entering Jersey for 2 years. On appeal, that was reduced to 1 year, but clearly a very interesting and fascinating story. This is BBC.